The history of Barry is one of travel, migration, settlement, and sometimes lost connections. Thanks to Keith Tregenna, we've looked further into the past of Charles Finnegan, who's buried in Merthyr Dyfan Cemetery and is acknowledged on the First World War Honours Roll. We now know a little more about his journey to fight in the war and his determination to do so. Now, said it's a journey for a lot of people in Barry, and it certainly was for Charles Finnegan. He was actually born in Charlotte County, New Brunswick, Canada, the son of Patrick Finnegan and Susan Finnegan. Like so many local New Brunswick people, 75% of the population at one stage, Patrick was born in Ireland. Susan was local to New Brunswick. Charles was the middle son of 7 brothers and 4 sisters that we know of, and he was born in New Brunswick, Canada. In 1913, he married Mary Ann Mooney in the Cardiff registration district of Glamorgan, which could well mean they were living in Barry at the time. However, as the following obituary from Charlotte County shows, once war was declared, he wanted to fight. This obituary was clearly written very close to the time of his death, and it reads as follows: "Some Charlotte County boys who have made the supreme sacrifice. Charles Finnegan. Mrs. Herman Munchie on Saturday received word from Scotland of the death of her brother Charles Finnegan, which occurred while serving in the British Navy. Deceased, he was only 40 years of age, and he was the second son of the late Mr. and Mrs. Patrick Finnegan of St. George. Early in life he abandoned the stone-cutting trade for the lure of the sea, which he followed for many years, visiting every quarter of the globe. At the outbreak of the war, he made several attempts to enter the British Army, but was rejected. Finally, 2 years ago, he was accepted in the Navy, serving on one of Her Majesty's ships, of which he had recently been made second officer. He died in Scotland of pneumonia, and his remains were taken to South Wales, where his widow resides, for burial." As Keith Tregenna has mentioned to us, Charles Finnegan was a boatswain, and he was in the Mercantile Marine Reserve. He was on a special service vessel, Peggy. He actually died on the 17th of October 1918. He was age 42. He and Mary Ann Finnegan lived at 11 Bassett Street, Barry Dock, and he was transported back from Scotland, where he had pneumonia, to Barry, so he could be buried where his widow lived. People have an image of the ships that went to war, but the Peggy, which had many names, it was given disguised names, as a number of that mercantile fleet were. It was called the Dargle, the Grabbit, and the Peggy, but originally it was the James J. Bibby, and it was a sail training ship used to train cadets for the HMS Indefatigable. Now, the Peggy was part of the Special Services vessels, and it's listed as being involved in an action on the 31st of October 1917 as the brigantine Dargle, in which a submarine was severely damaged, and 3 of the Dargle's crew were injured. The action against the Ebony submarine involved the schooner, as it's called, or brigantine, Dargle, HMS Star, armed trawlers Dentasia, Ethel Nutton, and Kildare. Now, as we know, Charles Finnegan had got promotion. He was officer class, and his widow, Mary Ann Finnegan, received the Victory and British War Medals for Charles' bravery in the First World War. We believe that Mary Ann died in September 1949, but we remember her and we remember Charles.